Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 7 of the Inspire series. Tonight, we don't have Karen with us. She's over in the US doing amazing things. Michelle is just back from the US, but I have as well Sarah, Josh, and Holly with me. Tonight, we are talking about the editor's eye, something really important, navigating the revision process and talking about the challenges authors face in revising their work based on editor feedback. So yeah, Michelle, do you want to take the floor first? This is kind of your domain.
It is. So I have been an editor for a little bit less time than I have been edited. So I've been specifically an editor for the last 10 years, but I've been published for the last 15. It was something that I kind of progressed out of seeing what editors I work with did really, really well, and also what editors I work with I felt like was potentially letting the author down. So that's why I started doing editing myself, and it's something I'm going to be asking our amazing team about good experiences that you've had with editors, and maybe if there is some tricky or bad experiences that you've had with editors as well. I want to preface our talk today with not everybody can edit your work, and you shouldn't be going for whoever's cheapest because you get what you pay for, and you should definitely be finding somebody who writes in the genre that you want edited. And a good editor will actually say no to work if they don't feel like they are the right person for the job, which I have done just today. If I don't feel like I am the best person to edit your work, I will not take your money. I will say no, and I will refer you to somebody else. Editing is hard. Both having your work edited and editing other people's work is hard. And I have, you know, always said to people, it's their story, it's not my story. But if you don't want me to make changes to your story, don't send it to me to edit, because that's what an editor does. They make slight changes to your story. So, Josh, have you had good or bad or both experiences with having your work edited?
Um, I would say both. They actually roll into one because it's one of the things that I've learned over. I think I've got six kids' books now, and all my effort is 70% of the book. The 30% is the editor. And I think people need to walk into the process of writing a book going, I am not going to write 100% of this book. I'm going to leave a certain percentage for what the editor does, what the designer does, and all that sort of stuff. So when I had my book, Magnificent Mistakes and Fantastic Failures, I had it ready for me. So I was happy with it. I gave it to my publisher, and they gave it to several other people. And this is how not to give feedback and not to do. They all sent through several different emails going, yeah, there's something in this book that's missing, Josh. There's something in this book that section there doesn't work. And they all gave me conflicting feedback, all from different emails. And you know what I did? I went into a meltdown and I closed the computer and I walked away for about 2 days. And I was like, because, it's your book, baby. And you think you've got it right, you just want them to edit it and make it nice. And so I'm just going, I don't know what they're talking about. So I had to go back to one of the editors and say, look, what do you actually mean by this? What do you, because a lot of them, they will put down information. They'll say, look, this doesn't work. Maybe you should try thinking of this. And when I've got three different people saying different things, I'm just going, okay, my mind exploded. So I had to get them to actually break it down into little bite-sized pieces. And once it came out, and then I'll put it away. I got the feedback back. I then walked away, let it gel, let it sort of mull over in my mind. And then I went, okay, I know what they're seeing. I now know that there was a gap in the section of my book that needed to be more coherent, more flowing. And I went, okay, I get what they're saying. and I got on with it and I worked it and it came out absolutely brilliant in the end of it. But it was that initial feedback, the editing process, that sent me into a meltdown. And yeah, it wasn't done the best way, but in the end it worked. Let's put it that way. So in the end it worked. So that was my experience. And all my experiences with editing have been pretty good with that regard. You know, Josh, you might want to think about this. You might want to reframe that. You might want to change the illustration for page 67 because it looks like a penguin instead of an elephant. You know, that sort of thing. So that's my experience with that one, Michelle.
Awesome. What about you, Holly?
Well, for me too, I've had mixed experiences. The one, there was a lot of change in it, and it was the most emotional one. I mentioned it in another one of ours. It was the most emotionally charged at that point, and it was so personal. And what I hadn't even realized, I had flipped even sometimes mid-sentence into the third person at times. Whenever it was something that I didn't really want to own, I went into third person. And, you know, the feedback I got was I realized this is very close to your heart. This is a common thing to do. However, we're not going to do it. And it was just so good because now I'm very aware of that. And I just really took that feedback and when I first looked at it, I thought, oh, I just don't even know what to do with this. And I followed the instructions and saved them because I thought, okay, these are going to be amazing for future as well. I never saw it again. I just corrected how, so it was kind of one of those, I don't know. I think this is going to be a lot of reworking, and it really wasn't. And generally, unless it is something that is, because a lot of my writing so far has been more on the personal side, unless it's something that I'm really, really kind of stuck on, I guess I would say, I generally will take the suggestions. Just one time I had something that was edited that had a really big chunk moved. I had moved something. What happened is I was in the process of moving some pieces around, and my computer failed.
Oh no.
And that I did have 2 backups, and up to that point I was working in Google Docs, and I always had the 2 copies going. But I found when I was moving bigger amounts of information, I found it was easier in the pages to do it in Word. So I had like maybe 6 pages left to edit when the computer failed.
Oh.
So then I moved the rest of it, because of course when you're that close you just want to get it done. I moved it on my iPad, but it just wasn't as smooth. And then this one chunk ended up in the book in 2 places. So that was kind of, and it wasn't caught early enough. So then then it was just like more revisions, of course. But anyway, things happen, right?
Mm-hmm. You sure do. It's what editors are for. They pick that stuff up. What about you, Sarah?
I actually had a similar experience to Josh when you were saying about what happened to you. That happened to me a couple of months ago, and that was probably my worst experience with editors. I was picked up for a commission to write something, and then it went back to them, but I had about 3 or 4 different editors live as I was putting it on there, and they ripped it to pieces. They ripped each other's ideas to pieces. They were conflicting. And I was just watching this happen. And it was probably just one of the worst experiences. I had a meltdown like you, because you just lose faith in what you've just written. They were just literally, putting it to pieces and disagreeing with each other. And it just got really confusing, and in the end we walked away from each other because I just thought I can't do this, because there's no critique here that's gonna help me with this. And I think that's important for people to kind of think about. There's
Sarah,
editing,
was that a
and there's,
picture book or was it a chapter book?
it was it was a children's picture book, but it's for an audio book specifically. And there are some very specific guidelines, and the very in the very beginning I was told, no matter what you write, it's got to be funny. It's got to make these preschools like, it's got to be fun, silly humor. And so you kind of go along there, and in the end that was taken out anyway. I mean, that wasn't even included, and there was like 4 different editors, and they were and actually when I would try and reply in to what they were saying, I was just completely disregarded. So it was a really bizarre experience, which I'm glad I'm not part of anymore. But equally, I want critique. And I think what I would say is, before things are sent off to editors, find a critique group, and you want them to critique it, because I would equally be suspicious if I sent my work, my full manuscript, say for a picture book, to an editor and they just said, oh yeah, brilliant, it's lovely. It's never going to be great on the first go. There's always going to be something which could do it more justice and could do your writing more justice, and the theme and the story and the characters. There always has to be something. So I would be equally suspicious and feel that that wasn't a good experience if an editor just said, yeah, amazing, love it, brilliant, leave it as it is. Because I think we have to remember as well, if we're writing these books that are going to obviously be published, when they're editing, it's not just necessarily our writing, but it's how the writing's going to fit and going to work for them as a publisher, but also for the market. And so you should be expecting critique back from editors. That's, it's they're not being mean. This is their job, and this is to elevate your writing, so that you should be expecting it. So I've had absolute opposite ends of just this crazy experience with all these editors. Like yourself, it was just like a car crash. It was just really full on. But equally, I would also feel kind of let down if an editor just said, yeah, it's great. So be prepared to have your work critiqued. Send it to a critique group, first of all, because even if you don't go with what they're saying in the critique group, which is different from your editor, I find it really interesting to hear other people's views of your work, specifically other picture book writers. So I've just done that recently, and that gives you a lot. So find a critique group in your genre first of all, and just hear their thoughts.
Jen, for you as a publisher, do you prefer people to edit their work before they send it to you for submission, or do you just kind of edit it when it gets to you?
I like to have work presented as best as it can be, but like Josh's 70%, that's good, and that's what we want. And then I always have in the back of my mind what editor I'm going to use, because that is really important. There's an editor for picture books, there's an editor for chapter books, there's an editor for fiction stories. There's all different ones. They all specialize. And so I would get someone then to look at something that's come through to me that does need an edit. And I always tell authors, expect it to be edited. Like Sarah just said, expect it to happen. Nothing is perfect. And I don't want you to give me perfection, but at the same time, I don't want you to hand me just anything. but I can, you know, when you can just see something and then I go, okay, yeah, that editor will be good for this, but that one, no, you know. And I've actually, you know, been sitting here listening to you going, why would you have 4 editors or whatever working on the one story? That just doesn't make sense
Makes
to
sense.
me.
Okay.
And I think, I don't know if it's because I choose people really carefully and I just give it to that one person. I struggle to get my head around why would you have 4 people? That's why I asked that question to you, Sarah, about whether it was a picture book.
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
would you have 4 people looking at a picture book? Like,
Yeah.
I just, yeah, that just doesn't sit well. Like, I mean, everyone's different, I guess, but
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah, you know, send me the best you've got, but understand that it's not perfect and that an editor is going to step in and, you know, switch it up. But the editor's job is to make your good words better, to make your good words great. And you've got to have that in your mind. You know, if they tell you to get rid of something, it's for a reason. It's not just because they don't like it. It's, you know, there's a reason for it. Or if they tell you to keep something in, that's equally as important. So, yeah, I mean, I guess I just, yeah, get given a great manuscript and choose an editor who will make it even better.
Yeah, I guess editing is tricky enough as it is, but just like when somebody's reading your story, everyone is going to read it differently with their own personal experience. An editor, if you give it to 4 different editors, each of those editors are going to edit it differently based on how they interpret the story. So yeah, when if we talk about like the process to publication, especially if any of you have independently published work that you've had edited, where in the publishing process do you get your work edited? Do you only wait until after submission, Josh, or do you get someone to edit it before you send it?
Okay, I'm a rarity because I never get anyone to look at my work until I send it to my publisher. I'm just a big scaredy pants, basically. I don't like what Sarah said. Did you send it to a critique group? I don't do that because they're just going to go, Josh, that's shit. What are you doing? You know. But it seriously, I do it myself. I get it to the best point that I've got it to. I may give it to my husband to read, and he would say a few things, and then I would then send it to
Is
the
he
publisher.
honest?
Yeah. What?
Is your husband honest when he
Oh
reads
yeah,
it?
yeah. Oh yes, he will go, what the hell have you written here?
It's
Go
brutal.
back, or he'll go, I can't read anymore. I can't. It's just shit. But he will actually go through it and he'll do a light edit just for grammar, and then
Yeah.
I'll send it to the publisher, and then they will go through their fine tooth comb. Like with the most recent book, which is called "Thank You: How to Turn a Grey Day into a Yay Day," that there was something I thought it was finished. I thought it was complete. Okay, this will give people an idea. I thought it was done, great, fantastic, and the editor said, there's something a bit missing. There's a story. Look, you're taking kids on a journey to discover about gratitude, but there's something that's missing here. And I think look, it's not going to be big. It could just be a couple of word changes. It could be a new illustration. It just could be a new thing. And then with my discussion with them, we've finally nailed what we needed to do. And they went, oh, okay, I see what you're saying now. So it was like, even though I thought it was finished, having that further discussion made it even better and made it even more practical for kids to have. So for that, I'm eternally grateful for that process.
Holly, when do you get your manuscripts edited?
So I've done a bit of both, but what I do now is first I always put it through ProWriting8. I always have that going all the time. So I'll go through it quite detailed with that. And then usually I'll have someone else edit first, then to my actual editor.
Awesome. What about you, Sarah?
I'm actually really lucky because my agent's an editorial agent, as she was saying when she was on. So everything goes through her and her team of agents who are also editors from children's publishing. So I actually really enjoy sending them over to her now. It's almost like Christmas, you know, like that surprise. I'm looking forward to what she's going to come back to me with, because she always changes something up, and I always tend to go, yes, I like that.
Mm.
So I'm really, really, really hugely lucky, because they do all of that now before it goes to publishers, who will then obviously have their own editors. But I know that really at that point, what I'm sending has had a really, really good edit. So yeah, I'm just, yeah.
And that's
lucky.
that trust too, isn't it? Trusting that person who
Yes,
you're handing
because
it to.
when she very first edited my very first manuscript with her, I didn't know how she was going to edit. And as I don't know if some people know, but my agent's, her first language is French, English is her second language. I just didn't know how this was going to work out. But my word, absolutely amazing. And I think that's because she comes from a children's publishing background. And I think that is the key, as Michelle, you said at the beginning, make sure that the editor is from within your genre, or it's just not going to work.
Jen, have you got any last questions or things that we didn't cover
No,
today?
I've just found this really interesting, like, from my perspective, hearing all your different experiences. It's I guess I tend to be, one manuscript, one editor, so it was really interesting for me to hear your experiences, Josh and Sarah, about having those different editors and how much they impact you. And like you both said, you had a meltdown because it's, what do I do with this? And I guess that's something I don't see. So yeah, it's just it's been a really interesting conversation for me to listen to that. Yeah. So all good. And I think we will leave it there. Editing is kind of a very different subject to talk about. And it's something we could talk about again, because it can be controversial, as we've just realised, and I have just realised. But we will stop it there, and we will chat again for our final episode of the series. Okay? I'll see you then.